Hello, welcome to ASN Sports TV. My name is Sam. You already know what time it is. Whenever you see me here, you know we have an important conversation with a very important guest. And tonight, I'm opportune and privileged to have on the seat a renowned professor of sports psychologist, Professor Heinrich Grobbelaar. With over 25 years in the academia, and he has reached a landmark of over 500 Google Scholar citations under his profile. Am I not privileged to have him? Welcome to the show, Professor.
Thank you very much, Sam. Thanks for having me on your show.
Thank you very much. Today, we're just going to have a little chat about sports psychology and how it can optimize the performance of an athlete. You know, be it soccer, be it track and field, be it basketball, any field of human endeavor, sports psychologist. So can you walk us through a little bit about more on your resume?
Yeah, like you said, I've been in academia for 25 years. So I studied sports science. So first and foremost, I'm a sports scientist, but I do specialize in sports psychology, and I've also got some postgraduate qualifications in that field. In South Africa, the field of sports psychology, in a sense, is poorly regulated in terms of who is able to work in this particular area. Also no registration categories with our Health Professions Council, but we're working hard to rectify that situation. And so yes, I've been privileged to be in this field for the past 25 years. I'm a full-time associate professor at Stellenbosch University on the southern tip of Africa. And I also do some part-time consultation work. Right now I'm working with a professional football or soccer team, and also have worked with some individual athletes over the years.
All right, that's very, very impressive. And for the fact that you are in that soccer field, that will make this conversation very, very interesting. Like, as a sports psychologist, a sports scientist, what can you describe as the key psychological factors that can contribute to the to optimize the performance of a soccer player?
Yeah, it's difficult to put it into one or two or three factors, but I would say really what is key is that it is all about consistent behavior. And then, of course, at the elite levels, it's to be able to peak under high pressure situations, and all throughout the athletic journey or pathway, it's also to deal with all the adversities that comes along with sports. So there's obviously the highs, but there's also the lows and the challenges and the difficult times. And that's very often what the fans, the spectators don't always see, is the hardship and the tough times that athletes go through. And it's really the ones who can deal with the off the pitch as well as on the pitch events, or even what I sometimes call the noise, or to quiet the noise and to focus the mind to be able to perform under really high pressure situations.
The pressure on these soccer players and on these athletes to perform at the highest level sometimes weigh them down, and sometimes it affects their mental well-being. So how does sports psychology contribute to the overall well-being of an athlete?
Yeah, I think an important point you're touching on there. So in my work as a consultant, I've got two roles. The one is performance behavior, and the other one is to look out for the well-being of the players. Because elite sport does come with certain risks and certain costs. Of course, the physical side, the injuries, but also in terms of the mental health, the well-being of the athletes. And so I think it's very important to prioritize that your athletes are first and foremost human beings. And, what happens in their private lives will affect them on the pitch. And of course, what happens on the pitch will affect them in their private capacity as well. But it's really to integrate. I don't really like the term balance. So we often say that you want to balance out the two. But for me, it's rather a case of synergizing. It's to get the best out of both worlds, the individual and the performer. And so we need to pay attention to both of those aspects. The individual who's participating in sport, but then of course also through the elite sport participation, the effect that has on their on their lives and their livelihoods.
Yes, I'm talking about striking a balance between what you just said now. Is there any example? Can you provide an example of effective psychological strategies that an athlete, can deploy to improve his performance?
Oh, well, there's probably a lot of different ideas. And first and foremost, it's to get to understanding and get the athletes to understand themselves better. If you think about a topic like pressure or anxiety or tension that they sometimes might experience, it's to really go on a journey with the athlete to get them to understand and get to know themselves better. How do they deal with difficult situations? What are the symptoms and the experiences that they experience? You can often come with your preset ideas and strategies and concepts, but it's really about allowing them to navigate their own careers and to learn from you and with you. And for example, I've never played soccer myself. It's not a sport that I grew up with. It's of course a huge sport in Africa and in South Africa. But then also for a lot of these players, sports psychology is a foreign concept. And so we've embarked on a journey together where I learn as much as possible from their lives as footballers and the sport itself. And in doing so, I also assist them through the skills and experience that I've gained over a few years.
Yeah, just like you said, you've never played soccer, and this field of sports psychology is kind of brand new to a lot of clubs and sports outfit in Africa. I'm from Nigeria, and I doubt if most of our soccer clubs have a well-equipped sports psychology department, because I also work in mental health here in the US. I'm a mental health clinician, and I interact and interface with a lot of patients, on a daily basis. So as a sports scientist and as a sports psychologist, how can it be integrated in a comprehensive training program of an athlete? Because it is very vital, the pressure for them to perform at the highest level, the expectations that come from the fans. And let's say, for example, a club purchased a player for, let's say, £100 million. That price tag alone carries a huge pressure on that player to perform. Now, how can they, inculcate sports psychology in the comprehensive curriculum, to enable that athlete to perform?
Yeah, Sam, if I say in South Africa, I think as far to the best of my knowledge, there's only 2 of the 16 top level teams in our Premier Soccer League that employ sports psychology consultants.
Wow.
There might be others, but to the best of our knowledge, it's only two of the clubs. What tends to be more common in South Africa, and it's based on the UK model, is that we've got sport chaplains. So typically pastors who will work in football and specifically look at the emotional well-being of athletes. And I think that's been carved out as the role that they play. And so I also work alongside one of these sport chaplains, and there are sometimes a little bit of overlap, and we work across boundaries, but as long as there's clear communication, I think that's key. But I think the one important thing is to say that it needs to be consistent and systematic. And by that I mean it's not something that should just receive attention every now and again. There really needs to be an integrated plan. There's got to be a structure. There's got to be time set aside for a variety of different types of engagements. So whether those are team sessions where you work with the players on their own, sometimes you work with the set of players alongside the coaches and the technical staff. There's also the work in smaller groups or even one-on-one consultation settings. But I think what is key throughout is that even on the side of the coaches, the technical staff, the typical performance directors, is that they should all be well aware of the work and the themes and the topics that you are addressing, so that there eventually becomes, in a sense, an alignment of the work that's being done, that the same vocabulary is being reiterated. And typically I come in, one day a week, I'm at the club, I'm working with a professional team and the under 21s or the reserve league. And so I alternate between the two teams. But ultimately the players and the coaches within each of those environments need to be fully aware of the work that I'm doing. And of course, regular interaction with coaches stay ahead and to know what their needs are, what they picked up from the players, because they are with the players, 6-7 days a week. And so I think that's quite important, just to have those communication lines, and so that everyone is on the same page length in terms of the work that one is doing.
All right, in case you're just joining us, this is ASN Sports TV, and I'm having this chat with a renowned professor of sports psychology and also a sports scientist, Professor Heinrich Grobbelaar from University of Stellenbosch in South Africa. And we are, rubbing mind, trying to find or have a conversation as regards sports psychology and the importance in an athlete life. South Africa is big in sports, be it rugby, be it cricket, be it soccer. In fact, the PSL is one of the best run league in Africa. And I have had the chance of interviewing a couple of South African players who play their career in the Major League Soccer. How does the mindset of an athlete affect their ability, to perform under pressure? Looking at it from as a sports scientist, not as a sports psychologist.
Yeah, I know the mindset is crucial, and I think you touched on it there. There's that right now, South Africa, we just recently won the Rugby World Cup. Again, we successfully did.
Congratulations.
Yeah, thank you. It was immense, and we were under a lot of pressure in doing so, and we ended up playing against the teams ranked number 2 to 6. So we really played against the top 5 teams in the world, within the round robin stages and then all the knockout matches. And we ended up in both the quarters, semi-finals and finals, beating our opposition by one point. So those margins are extremely small, and it really came down to, of course, the physical preparation, the tactical astuteness of the coaching staff, but really also about the mindset, and specifically also a winning mindset that has been developed and cultured over many years. Right now, we're also engaged in the World Cup of Cricket, and so I think today it was confirmed that South Africa will be in the semi-finals against our old rivals, Australia. Now, anyone who knows anything about international cricket would know that South Africa carries a bit of a choker tag with them. And Australia, even though they were almost on the brink of being eliminated, they had a heroic performance yesterday to creep into those semi-finals, and you can never write them off when it gets to those finals, because, again, it really comes down to those top teams in the world who just got that instinct, that ability to switch on at the biggest moment and deliver world-class performances. And it really comes down to mindsets. But those mindsets are not always innate. It develops over time. And so if I think back to about 5 years ago, South African rugby, we were probably ranked 6th or 7th in the world. We were really, really struggling. And it took one coach with his team to turn things around within the space of about 18 months. And that same team 4 years later has now defended the crown again. And I think a lot of it had to do with that instinct, that will, to fight together, to win together. And I think, of course, also in the South African context, we're a very diverse nation, the Rainbow Nation, as Madiba would say, our late President Nelson Mandela. And from that, we often also derive, a lot of energy or power within our teams, is to embrace that diversity, to pull together, and to really cherish each and every one and the unique contribution that they make to teams. But ultimately blending all of that together into creating that mindset to be champions and have a champion mindset. That's, of course, what we endeavor to achieve on a daily basis. Through hard training, whether that's in the gym, on the pitch, in a boardroom. It's really about setting those dreams up there and identifying the processes that one needs to follow to achieve them.
In case you're just joining us, this is still ASN Sports TV, and my name is Sam, and still here with me is renowned professor of sports psychologist and a sports scientist, Professor Heinrich Grobbelaar of Stellenbosch University in South Africa, and we are talking about sports psychology and athlete. So we have seen in some major sporting events where athletes, where they break down due to pressure or whatever excuse they might have, We saw Naomi Osaka in one of the Grand Slams. We saw Simone Biles in the last Olympics due to maybe pressure or what we can call it. But as a sports psychologist, what are the effective techniques you think that these athletes would have deployed or can deploy in improving focus and concentration during this high-pressure sporting event?
Yeah, it's a difficult one because, of course, each athlete is unique. They're individuals. They've got different ways through which they appraise or look at something like pressure. I think coming back to rugby that we spoke about earlier in the South African team, one of the big narratives that came out over the last 2 World Cups is this idea that playing in semi-finals and finals isn't really pressure, it's a privilege. Pressure in the South African context is something that many of our citizens experience on a day-to-day basis, but also some of the players, hunger, poverty, all these things, and so the national team actually came out with I wouldn't say a slogan, but really an approach to say that, pressure is something that you place on yourself, but we need to embrace the privilege of being in these situations. Now, of course, at the top level, and you mentioned some of the athletes who's had experiences and openly with mental health challenges, is to know that at the end of the day, they are human beings. They are constantly under scrutiny. The media, I think, plays a huge role, and I think it was Michael Phelps during the 2012 Olympic Games he was quoted as saying that the interviews after his races are more difficult than the races itself. And of course, he aimed to, and he achieved the goal of winning 9 gold medals. But afterwards, there's doping tests, and then it's the interviews and late nights, and then you still got to do your cool down swims, and tomorrow you just got to repeat and do it again. So ultimately, it's about equipping the athlete to, over time, get comfortable with the fact that they are elite athletes. They are under constant scrutiny. And very often what also happens at the very top level is it becomes a very lonely place. Because if you're the world champion or if you rank number 1, the others are all there to try and knock you off your pedestal. And it becomes a target. There's a target on your back, and the opponents are going to come for you. And I think what sometimes makes it worse is, as you mentioned before the interruption, that sometimes you end up losing a match, and then you come into a media situation where they ask you, you just lost. Why did you lose? And then you sometimes see that these athletes, they are struggling to deal with the fact that they've just lost, for whatever reason. And now it's really being imprinted in their minds that you've lost, and so sometimes even the tags that gets added to it is that they are losers. And so we've seen athletes in the past struggling, especially to deal with the media, and that's even boycotted some of the media interviews. Of course, there's often sanctions and there's other penalties, and recently we'll even saw athletes withdrawing from tournaments as a result of it. But I think that's again where coaches and the support staff needs to rally around players and really support them to deal with that pressure side of sport, the high stakes, the highs and the lows that they are going to encounter across during their careers.
Right. Finally, before I let you go, as a sports psychologist, not as a sports scientist, what are the potentials or the long-term benefits of incorporating sports psychology into athletic training program? Because you mentioned earlier in this conversation that in South Africa, only I think 2 clubs, have the service of a sports psychologist. So what are the benefits of incorporating this into the athlete training regimen?
I think one of the major benefits is sometimes to have someone who is a little bit neutral. In a sense, you're just that little bit further away from the sport, from the setting. You're not the head coach, you're not making the decisions or the team selections. You might sometimes be involved in some of the processes around it. But it sometimes takes someone almost from the outside to step into the athlete's world and allow them just to be able to verbalize some of the things that they are experiencing. To have a soundboard, just someone who can give them a few ideas, a few pointers, but also just help them to explore and to develop their own psychological skills and repertoire. I think the other thing is we sometimes come in also knowing that, you know, and so this is a very strange statement that I make, but I often tell athletes is that unless they die on the playing field, they'll be human beings for longer than they'll be athletes. And so we really need to consider the post-athletic life of athletes. What will they do once the lights go out after their final competitive match? And I think that's also where sports psychology consultants come in, is to really also help the athletes to develop skills in sport that they can apply in sport, but that maybe hopefully one day they can also generalize to other areas of their lives. And I think that's probably the lasting impact that one wants to have, is not only to affect the performance on the pitch, which of course is what we're working towards, but to have a lasting impact on the lives of so many of these young people who invest their lives and their talent and their skill into the sport. And we as the spectators, in a sense, we gain so much from it. But after that final whistle, that final match, when the jersey gets, you know, retired or the spikes are hung against the wall, what happens to these athletes afterwards? And I think that's something that a lot of elite environments need to really get their minds around, is how to support their athletes in the long run.
Thank you very much, Professor. I really appreciate your insight in this conversation. It's very, very valuable, and I really appreciate you for taking our time from your busy schedule, because you are a very busy man. This interview was scheduled like 2 months out. When I missed the first time you came online, I was mad at myself. Damn, this like 2 months, I missed it. But I really appreciate you for coming back, and thank you very much. And thank you very much.
Thank you, Sam. It was a pleasure, and have a great day there in America. It's nighttime here in South Africa, so I'm going to enjoy dinner now and then have an early night's rest.
All right. Thank you very much. Nice night. Yeah. Bye-bye.
Okay. Bye-bye.
Thank you.